and all is still go as we monitor our status for it. Good luck and Godspeed.
Have you ever had a premonition, a feeling that something dreadful was about to happen?
No, Mother, I have not been drinking.
Do you happen to have a pair of birds that are just friendly?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I have to go back into the past once more, just once more.
This is HitchPod, a podcast counting down the 20 best movies of the wonderful 20th century director Alfred Hitchcock. I'm Kat Jones, with me is Stan Libke, and in this episode we're comparing the 11th best Hitchcock movie, which was The 39 Steps. Higher than 11 on my list.
Yes.
Anyway, that was the 11th best movie that we thought out of 20, and we're comparing it with the movie the Oscars thought was the best one from that year, and that was called Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yes. But before we get to Mutiny on the Bounty, we always begin these Oscar comparison podcasts by giving you a cryptic clue for the next movie, so you can have that in the back of your mind as you listen to our podcast. So at the end of this movie, we will tell you what the 10th best Hitchcock film is, and hence which movie we will be rewatching next. But we will do it in a cryptic crossword style clue. So here we go. See if you can work this out before the end of the episode. The clue is: going in for opening night of this film. 4 letters.
4 letters.
4 letters.
So there could be a few to choose from there amongst the Hitchcock movies, but we'll let you ponder that as we move on to the basic information about Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah, so it came out in 1935, of course, the same year as The 39 Steps, which is why they're head-to-head. This one got an IMDb rating of 7.6 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 96%. Very good.
Does that mean people are watching this movie?
Apparently.
I find that very hard to believe.
Does seem unlikely. Got a Metacritic score of 87%, which equates to universal acclaim. Although not quite universal, of course, because we did find a review from Time magazine, which says, despite the efforts of producer Irving Thalberg, director Frank Lloyd, 3 scenarists, and $2 million to give it balance, polish, and direction, the picture lacks all 3. So there you go. Pretty harsh from Time magazine.
I hope that came out after the Academy Award was awarded, because that would be a ballsy review. But probably it was before.
It was at the time, yes.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, there were Oscars, but only nominations. There were 3 Best Actor nominations. So Gable, Lawton and Tone were all nominated.
But there were only 2 main actors, so that was a good feat.
Yeah, it was also nominated for Best Director, but it only won for Best Picture.
Yeah, Tone was barely in it. 3 Best Actors is an absolute positive, sure sign there's not enough women in this movie.
Yeah, we will get to that. You can watch this movie. You can't stream it for free in Australia or the UK, sadly. In the US, you can watch it on Tubi, which is some kind of streaming
Sounds
thing.
like a vegetable, but, we're sure it's a streaming platform.
Yeah, but you can rent it cheaply enough, and if you really want to, you could track down a DVD or a Blu-ray version.
Not that we're recommending
No,
any
we're
of
not
that.
recommending that, but you could go to a library perhaps and get it for free.
Yes, go borrow it from a library. We never recommend that. And libraries have a lot.
They do.
They would have all the Academy Award winning movies,
You would imagine
surely.
so, yeah.
Yeah, if not, get yourself a membership at a different library.
All right, so it stars Charles Lawton. He plays Captain Bligh. And we do know Charles Lawton. We've seen him previously. We saw him back in season 1 when we covered The Paradigm Case and Jamaica Inn, both of which I assume we'll be seeing in the top 10 at some point. Very, very acclaimed Hitchcock movies.
Charles Lawton was well cast as Captain
Charles
Bligh.
Lawton was amazing.
Classic villain.
Yes. Also well cast, I think, was Clark Gable. He played Fletcher Christian. And he, of course, is most famous for Gone with the Wind.
He was very handsome in this role, perfectly cast.
Yes. And then we had Roger Byam, who was played by Franchot Tone. So the synopsis of the movie is that first mate Fletcher Christian leads a revolt against his sadistic commander, Captain Bligh, in this classic seafaring adventure based on the real-life 1789 mutiny.
That's a great classic summary of a movie. I mean, it's a biopic in a way.
It is, yeah. It very much is, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was written by Talbot Jennings, Jules Firthman and Kerry Wilson.
Talbot Jennings is a good name.
That is a great name. They did the screenplay, and it was based on a book, or actually it was based on a section of a trilogy of books. That trilogy was written by Charles Northoff and James Norman Hall, and those books, of course, were based on William Bligh and Fletcher Christian's real-life events. So it was directed by Frank Lloyd, who had previously already won a couple of Best Director Oscars for Cavalcade and The Divine Lady, so he didn't need any more for this one. And it is, as you mentioned, an adventure / biopic / drama. And I do have a tagline here.
Yeah.
pulsating exotic romance, turbulent drama, mighty spectacle in MGM's magnificent $2 million screen triumph.
Oh, yes. Always good when you put the amount of money.
The budget, yep.
But the budget goes into the middle. So
Yes.
interesting.
I'm very proud of how much they'd spent on it, apparently. So if you haven't seen this and want to go see it, you should probably pause the podcast here. Go watch it. And only if you really want to would be our recommendation, I think.
That's right. You may have studied this at school. It might have been a history project for you, depending which country you're from. And
Yes.
if not, there's a massive Wikipedia page on the actual mutiny.
Yes, so that's also an option. But anyway, the plot of this movie is we do begin in England in 1787, and we're getting a whole heap of sailors in pubs and the like, just drinking merrily, and they're suddenly pressed into service on the crew of the HMS Bounty, and whether they like it or not. And it turns out most of them don't like it because they know that their captain will be William Bligh, as we mentioned, played by Charles Lawton. And Bligh has a bit of a reputation as being a tyrant. Despite this, the Bounty set sail a few days later. He's got Fletcher Christian. This is the very handsome and dimpled Clark Gable. He's his second in command. And but just before they leave, Bligh flogs a man to death to teach the crew a lesson. That's
Not even out of the docks.
Got to set some standards.
And also Fletcher Christian is a common man as well. There are some officers on this
Yep.
ship, but Fletcher Christian, even though he's somehow second in command, he's also a commoner.
Yep. So we do meet some of the crew as well. Most notably, this is Roger Byam, played by Franchot Tone, and he's going to be the middleman of this mutiny triangle. So looking forward to that.
He is from high stock,
He is from high
high-born
stock,
stock, or whatever they say in England. We promptly forget anyway which one he is.
Yeah.
I could
There's
never
a lot of them.
could not keep track of it.
There's a drunk dude who's got 2 wives or something. There's a doctor with a wooden leg who's
Yep.
also drunk all the time. It's all lots of antics from the
That's
sailors.
right.
And
We get
they're-
lots of sailing, don't we, for a bit?
Yeah, we do get a lot of sailing. The journey is supposed to take 2 years.
And that's what it felt like.
It did, indeed. But we learned pretty quickly that Bligh just doesn't put up with any nonsense from his crew. If they don't meet his standards, he'll strap them to the mast or he'll keel haul them. And keel hauling, which I didn't
Yeah,
think
we
I
found out what it
realised.
was.
Yeah, so that's where they kind of get dragged along by the keel of the ship, I guess. They hauled along by the keel of the ship. I guess it all makes sense. When you
People
think about
pay
it.
good money for that now. It's like
Yeah, it's like water skiing.
water skiing. It's like a holiday activity.
Yep. Anyway, he'll whip them. He'll whip them at a moment's notice. He'll get somebody to thrash them. Whatever he has to do to earn their respect, he'll do. Christian is less impressed by this. He tries to get Bligh to chill out a bit, but Bligh won't listen to Christian. He knows how to captain a ship, and he does. He captains it very successfully all the way around.
Lots of
lots
hazards.
of places. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the way to Tahiti. But he is a bit annoyed with Christian for being such an uppity kind of naysayer and questioning his authority. So once they reach Tahiti, Bligh tells Christian that he can't leave the ship. You have to stay on the ship, despite the fact you've been on here for the better part of, I don't know how long, a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we'll all go aboard and meet the natives.
And all the people who are pressed into service suddenly go, well, if we'd known we were coming to Tahiti, because it's like this absolute paradise.
Yeah. Which impresses Byam because he's one of the ones who can leave the ship. He immediately falls in love with the daughter of the island chief, starts learning the language of the locals, and eventually manages to convince the chief to ask Bligh if Christian can get off the ship just for a little bit.
And this was a bit where I just thought he lived on the island. I had no idea that he'd come off the ship. I'd forgotten who he was altogether. Anyway, that's because he was speaking the language fluently.
Yeah, didn't take him long. He's a very clever chap. So Bligh does relent and he lets Christian off the ship, and Christian just rocks up, shirt half undone, immediately seduces an island girl.
Yep.
Off they go. They all hook up for a little bit, and eventually it's time to leave. So Bligh starts rationing the water because they've got these breadfruit plants. The whole reason they went to Tahiti was to pick up breadfruit plants, which they were going to take around to the Caribbean. But they don't have enough water to water the plants for the rest of the journey. So Bligh says, well, the humans don't need that much water.
Yep.
Let's start rationing that. Which starts annoying people, and really starts annoying people when the ship surgeon, this is the drunken peg-legged piece of comic relief, he falls down dead.
Yes,
And,
not so funny now.
Less funny.
Yeah.
So
Better for us, though, because his jokes were pretty terrible.
It was pretty terrible, yeah. So that's enough bad news for Christian. He mutiny o'clock.
Finally!
He rallies the troops. We promised a mutiny. It's taken us a long time to get there.
Yeah.
He takes control of the ship. He lowers down one of the, what do they call, the life rafts, and says, Bligh, you get in that with anybody who's still loyal to you. And there's probably, a couple of dozen still loyal to Bligh. So they all get aboard this tiny boat with a smattering of rations, and they're clearly doomed to die. But Christian doesn't care. He says, off you go. Good luck to you. Except Bligh, like a la lifeboat, he heroically rallies all these people on board, and they manage to sail all the way to land.
Incredible.
Absolute hero, Bligh. Christian, meanwhile, has turned the ship around. He's gone straight back to Tahiti because he really liked that girl he met there.
Yeah, why not?
Byam wanted to go with Bligh, but he couldn't. So he was stuck on the Bounty because there wasn't enough room on the boat. So he was actually stuck on the Bounty. Once they get back to Tahiti, he's happy enough. He decides, all right, let's just chill out here then, because this is quite nice. So he marries the chief's daughter, has a child with her. Like, they're just settling in. This is much better than sailing around the world. But suddenly they look on the horizon. So obviously we're 9 months later, at least.
At least. There's several children have been born by this point.
And they look up on the horizon, and here comes Bligh. He's commandeered another ship. This is the HMS Pandora, and he's showing up to bring the mutineers to justice. So Christian says, yoink, I'm out of here. He gets back on the Bounty, and off he sails. He sails out of the movie, basically. He's had enough.
Yeah.
He's gone. Byam stays on Tahiti, and he's captured and brought back, along with a few others, to face trial.
And then it turns into a courtroom drama.
Yeah, then the last, 15, 20 minutes is just this dreadful courtroom drama. Byam is eventually found guilty, partially of mutiny, but mostly of subjecting the audience to this interminable monologue right at the end there.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on and on about how terrible Bligh was. He's sentenced to be hanged, but the King of England decides that would have been too downer an ending, so he pardons him.
Yeah, plus he's rich.
Yeah, and he's rich. And Christian, we cut back to Christian like in a post-credits sequence, and he's just found another island, and that's basically the movie. So that's Mutiny on the Bounty.
I guess it's a happy ending.
I think so.
We don't find out what happens to Bligh, but he goes on and causes chaos. We'll talk about that shortly. Is this the most famous mutiny in the world, or is it just in Australia that we find this famous?
I'm not sure. I mean, it must be famous in England as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, maybe.
But Anyway, I am Team Bligh.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, and this is very literal because when I was in primary school, you know how you had like the Hogwarts houses. Slytherins and the like. Our houses for athletic carnivals and swimming carnivals were named after the first 4 governors of New South Wales.
They weren't just named after Captain Pricks of Captains in history.
So they were basically, when the British colonised Australia, the governor of New South Wales was basically the highest ranking person in the land. He was the
head of Australia.
The head of Australia, essentially, yeah. And yes, the first 4 governors were men known as Philip, Hunter, King, and Bligh. And I was literally on the Bligh team. So yes, I'm required by primary school law to support Bligh's actions, which of course I do. He's a great captain. Flog some sense into them. Teach them a lesson, yeah.
That's
Only way to
incredible.
get things done.
Captain. So you were basically in a house that was named after some. I mean, there's been a lot of house names that have been cancelled.
Yes.
All over the world.
Yep.
I think we had one at school, but anyway, I was in. My house was Lily.
Lily, like the flower.
No, like the cricketer.
Really?
Lily, like the cricketer.
So that would have been in the era of Lily the cricketer.
That's right.
That's very kind of modern.
That's
Did
in
they
the
change
80s.
it every 5 minutes to put a new cricketer in?
They were also, there was named after old Olympians and
okay.
people that I had never heard of as well. Lily was the most modern.
And you were in Lily.
I was in Lily.
Oh, very good.
It was white,
Yes.
as you would expect.
Anyway, I do think Bligh knew what he was doing. Like for him to actually get that other boat to safety was kind of miraculous.
Of course, he didn't come back on the Pandora. No. It was a different captain, an incompetent captain actually, who got shipwrecked. Just proving how good Bligh was as a captain.
Yeah.
He was obviously not very good manager of people, so not a great person to be put in charge of New South Wales.
Yes. No, we will get onto that as well. But the story of how he guided this lifeboat to safety was actually the second part of the trilogy of books that those the 2 writers wrote about. So I'm not quite sure how you write an entire novel about people in a boat sailing and across the seas and getting to safety.
Talk about a commercial forethinker, because he's put out a trilogy before trilogies were fashionable and made 3 times as much money out of something that in those days would have just been a very long book normally, but he's got a trilogy out of it. What a great,
well done.
fantastic bit of commercial publication there.
Very, very well done. So, yeah, as mentioned, this is based on a true story. I mean, there's some dramatic license taken with it, as you say. It wasn't really Bligh coming back to arrest everybody. He basically went home and chilled out, I think, after he got the boat to safety.
Yeah. I really liked the fact that we switched to following Byam at the end as if, I don't know, Christian was Janet Leigh in Psycho or something. Like he just sails out of it's like, this is too happy now. We're going to follow the drama. Let's follow the drama all the way back to England.
Yeah,
it was a very strange decision.
It was a very oddly structured movie, I think. Yeah. But it was fine. And as you mentioned, we do know, if you're Australian, you do know that this wasn't the end of Bligh, because there was a different sequel for Bligh, because as I mentioned, the reason I had a house named after him, because he was the governor in charge of a very early Sydney, and perhaps the most famous event in his governorship was something called the Rum Rebellion, which was
another mutiny.
Another mutiny. It was a coup in which the soldiers took over control of the colony because Bligh was being a dick about rum supplies. So he was not a very good leader of anybody.
That is very funny.
Yeah, very funny that no matter where he went, people were just like, I'm so sick of you.
Please. And it was just typical of every time they had someone they couldn't manage in England, they always sent them to Australia.
Yep.
You knew that if there was anyone ending up there as a leader, they were just too hard to handle.
Yeah, and that sounds very much like Bligh. But good, really good work on the bounty, Bligh. Hey, we've got an idea. Why don't you go to the other side of the planet and stop bothering us?
Yep.
So what about some stuff about the making of the movie?
Well, we know that Gable and Lawton were cast by Thalberg together because they didn't get on.
Yep.
And so they wanted some real life animosity that had kind of fueled their scenes together. There was some Lawton's overt homosexuality that Gable didn't like. He was homophobic, and Lawton brought his muscle-bound boyfriend on set and as a masseur, and so there was a lot of animosity there that it does come through in the movie.
Yeah, it was good casting. Gable and Tone apparently didn't like one another either. There was some kind of love triangle with Joan Crawford when they were making a movie together, Dancing Lady in 1933. But apparently they bonded over the course of this movie, presumably because they were having flings with the girls who were their girlfriends in the movie.
Good grief! Well,
they're much younger girlfriends in the movie.
Very much younger. Yeah. Yes, interesting. And also they were shooting on location, so that's all kinds of icky.
Yep.
Let's hope the girls gave their full consent there.
Yep.
Byam, it was supposed to be played by Cary Grant.
No, that would have been a very different movie, I think.
Yeah, he was already attached to Paramount and couldn't be released. So that would have been fantastic.
Would have been a less forgettable role, I think, if you have got Cary Grant in there as well. Now you've got some real star power, no slight intended on the actor who did play Byam in this one, whose name I've already forgotten.
Well, he didn't win an Oscar, did he?
He's no Cary Grant. Well, nobody won an Oscar.
No.
So that was the other interesting fact about this. This is still the last movie, the last Best Picture winner to not win any other Oscar.
Huh.
So
just a picture.
Ever since then, it's Best Picture has always been accompanied by at least one other Oscar. So.
And it's surprising because there were some really big scenes that were popular in those days, the sort of travelogue scenes, very similar to Around the World in 80 Days. I mean, those exotic locations like Tahiti is really the Best Picture material just because it was bringing another country in, full widescreen to everyone who was watching. So a lot of shooting on location, right, in Tahiti. Yeah.
And a lot of great shots of the bounty itself, or the ship that was portraying the bounty.
Incredible.
And you kind of think about how they had to shoot them. There's not much trickery you can do about that.
Yeah.
You've got the bounty in full sail and you've got somebody on a boat beside it, presumably trying to film it.
Yeah, and you got a model, for some of the scenes.
Yep.
But it would have been... So it really, the picture, the shooting and everything was really amazing.
Yep. And it was a success. It was a big hit. It was critically acclaimed. It is ranked 86 on the American Film Institute's 100 Years, 100 Movies poll, surrounded by Duck Soup and Frankenstein. And... probably even more impressively, Bligh is ranked number 19 on the AFI villains list, which is presumably a typo. He belongs on the heroes list, of course. But the number 18 villain is also a seafaring one, and that's from a movie 40 years later. Do you want to have a guess as to what other villain might be just one notch higher than Bligh?
I can think of Captain Hook from Peter Pan, but I don't think he would even rate being on the list because he wasn't a very good villain.
Yep.
Oh, I know. It's Jaws.
It is Jaws,
Yes.
Yes, the big scary shark.
Wowee. There'd be a few Hitchcock villains on that
There is.
list.
Yeah. Norman Bates is Hitch's highest ranked villain. He's number 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so only person who beats him is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, fair
was ranked
enough.
number 1.
Yeah.
But he beats Darth Vader. So that's pretty good from Norman.
What about Mrs. Danvers? Does she make the list?
She's number 31.
Okay.
So there you go.
Fantastic.
So we got some lines from this movie.
Not many good lines.
Not many, no. But I do enjoy some of Bligh's antics.
Bligh had the best lines, I think.
Bligh did have some good lines. So we got one where Christian comes up to him, and this is very early on when he's flogging a guy to death. And Christian says, "The prisoner is dead, sir." And Bligh says, "Never mind. Continue with the punishment."
Yes, very classically, the punishment is the person having to flog them
Yes.
too. Bligh says to one of the early dudes who's getting rounded up to go on the ship, "What's your name?" And the guy says, "Thomas Ellison, sir. Pressed into service. I've got a wife, a baby." Bligh said, "I asked your name, not the history of your misfortunes."
What about the Bechdel test? Does it pass this one?
Nope, doesn't even pass the first sentence.
Yeah, I don't think so.
There's
Yeah, I
not
don't think
two
there's
named
two
women.
named women. Yeah,
No.
I think, there's no named women.
No, that's the end of that. And the women don't say much either.
No.
Like even when they're talking about a man, it's monosyllabic, I think.
Yeah.
Right, technology. How could modern technology change this plot?
Well, I think if you were trying to conduct a modern day mutiny, you need a lot of private WhatsApp groups. So
Yep.
you'd be going, "Oh, did you see what Bligh did today?" And LOL, what a dick, and emojis and stuff. So
Yep.
I think that would work.
Modern day mutinies that happen in, tech companies
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What about getting the same, there aren't many reasons why you would be stuck on a ship, right?
Yep.
Can you think of any? What, they wouldn't be picking up breadfruit. What would they be doing?
I'm not sure. I mean, you wouldn't even bother picking up breadfruit. You just order it on Amazon these days. So
Yep.
no mucking about with that. I guess if you wanted to do it these days, I mean, a spaceship is your modern, right?
You'd only get the same feeling from space voyage to an outer planet,
Yeah.
and then you are kind of stuck there in a similar vein. It has to. We have to put sci-fi over the top of it to
I
make
think
it
so. Yeah.
make it a modern example. Although, I mean, these days they may remake the movie in 24 hours, which could just be one long plane flight.
Yeah.
One long haul plane flight.
Yep. Oh, that would work as well.
What about any tributes or remakes?
So as we mentioned, it was originally a book series, and even more originally, it was a diary from Bligh. So Bligh kept very detailed diaries of what happened on this trip, and so these diaries were augmented by some court transcripts. So there's lots of research and information readily available.
Does that mean Byam's speech is from the transcript?
I hope not.
God.
I'm sure that was movified.
No.
I'm not sure.
It was one of those monologues at the end that went on for a good 2 or 3 minutes with not a single person interjecting, which would never be. A completely silent courtroom with 40 men in it.
Yeah.
All listening.
Yeah. There was also a 1962 remake of this movie starring Marlon Brando as Christian and Trevor Howard as Bligh, which was a big flop.
Yeah.
But then there was another one in 1984.
Oh, good grief.
And the cast of this one is interesting. This is Mel Gibson as Christian and Anthony Hopkins as Bligh. So
Wow.
speaking of Hannibal Lecter, so Anthony Hopkins as well. This one wasn't technically a remake of this movie. It was the same story, obviously, based on the actual Mutiny on the Bounty. But this one was going for some greater historical accuracy.
That's a very derivative choice of male lead, right? It's Clark Gable, Mel Gibson, very similar. Anthony Hopkins, Charles Lawton, very similar.
Yep, yes.
Amazing.
But there were a few earlier versions. So
Oh, good grief. How many versions of this movie do we need?
well, I'm not sure we need all of them, but these ones are very obscure. So there was a very, very early version made in Australia, New Zealand. It was like some kind of joint venture in 1916. So
Wow.
there was a version of Mutiny on the Bounty made in 1916. And then there was also a 1933 free Australian film starring Errol Flynn.
Oh, I want to see that version.
Yeah.
That would have been great. He would have been playing Christian, obviously.
Yes, and apparently he tried to tell people for years afterwards that he played Christian 2 years before Clark Gable, and nobody ever believed him. He's like, I swear. So
I think he would have been a better Fletcher Christian even than Clark Gable.
Yeah, I would have been very interesting.
All good choices.
So what about the Oscar movie cinematic universe? How are we going to tie this into the other Oscar movies we've seen?
It felt very similar to Around the World in 80 Days, but we're kind of too early in the historical period.
Yep.
So did Fogg go to Tahiti?
I'm not sure he went to Tahiti, but if he did, I hope that Byam's grandchildren were there, just causing him trouble. Like he kept running into trouble with the natives everywhere he went. Yep. So let's assume that he stopped off in Tahiti somewhere, and an untold day of the story was Byam's grandchildren mucking him about.
There are loads of Bligh and Christian descendants everywhere. They spread their seed far and wide in the Pitcairn and other Pacific islands, and they live there to this day. So I think that's a pretty likely outcome there.
Yes. All right, so let's get through the Hitchcock movie checklist. Do we have a MacGuffin?
I think we have a great MacGuffin in the breadfruit, right?
Yes, definitely.
The whole reason for the journey, and no one cares.
No one cares one iota about the breadfruit, but they could be literally picking up anything from Tahiti or anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's this breadfruit, and that ultimately causes the mutiny.
That's a great MacGuffin, and it's also a MacGuffin in real life, because they were really picking up breadfruit, which really no one on the ship cared about.
No.
I think it's there are not very many examples of MacGuffins in real life, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. I'm not even sure I know what breadfruit is, but
no, I don't know
it
either.
was something that was very important to them.
there's no need to know. We don't have to know.
Yep. Cameos. So we didn't have a director cameo in this, but the movie did have some other random cameos. So we had a cameo from Jimmy Cagney, who was very famous at the time, but he was just a background extra because he rocked up in Tahiti and needed the money. So I'm not sure it was Tahiti he rocked up to. He was somewhere, but he just said, I'll just hang around in the background for a bit. Got some extra money, and that was enough. And speaking of Around the World in 80 Days, David Niven, who was not at all famous at this point, he was also an extra.
Was he the 6-month-old baby?
He could have been, yes.
No, he would have been older than that. Interesting. Well, we do also have some birds and animals, quite a few.
Yep.
There was the Bligh people in the canoe or whatever they were, the rowboat. They tried to whack some seabirds with their oars so that they could eat them.
I think they eventually succeeded.
Yeah, they did. It was very similar to the boat in The Birds, where they're trying to.
Yes, that's true.
They're trying to catch that bird or fend it off.
Yep. And at one point we also had a sailor bringing a pig on board, which was a neat trick.
There's some gratuitous killing of animals, I think.
Yeah, they caught a shark at one point as well. So
lots of dead animals. Very symbolic of the story.
What about a lead character at a standstill or on the run?
I guess Christian he's on the run at the end.
Definitely.
He's on the run after the mutiny. He's on the run, and he's also on a standstill a little bit on the island at some point, and also on the boat.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
Anyway, I think Christian.
Yeah, Christian's
he fits.
Christian going on the run at the end after Bligh's triumphant comeback.
Yeah.
Excellent. Characters with elements of good or bad. I think this one's interesting because I think in real life it was more nuanced, and they actually, rather than make them more grey shaded in the movie, they actually made them more black and white in the movie.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think Bligh was quite the villain in real life. I don't think he was a great leader, but he wasn't actually keel hauling people or whipping people to death or anything. And I'm not sure Christian was the hero that he's portrayed as in the movie either. So this is the exact opposite of what Hitchcock does, trying to add a bit of shades of grey. This is you're the white hat, you're the black hat.
So as well as that, what other tropes did you find?
So I went to TV tropes and I found bad boss. This is kind of an archetypal bad boss. Again, the drunken sailor, the ship surgeon. Happily ever before. So this is a good one. This is the movie ends with no mention of what happened to Christian afterwards, after they escaped and settled on Pitcairn Island, which was not really that pleasant. So they just said we'll stop the movie before things get too unpleasant.
Yeah, and they all just killed each other. I seem to remember from the history.
And the story of what happened on Pitcairn Island, that's those savvy writers' third book in the trilogy. So they really knew how to plot out a series.
They're probably just imagining that, right? They wouldn't have had any idea.
I guess there must have been some survivors who told them. Yeah. This trope I very enjoyed. not even bothering with the accent. So not many of them bothered with the English accent. It was really only Bligh, which is kind of fitting because the English accent is often shorthand for being evils. Like in Star Wars, the Empire always has
It was quite
English
grating
accents.
at the start to have these American accents leaving from an obviously England premise, but you just forget about it.
Yeah. It's the same as like when you watch a movie in black and white and then eventually you don't even notice. I couldn't even tell you if this movie was in black and white. I assume it was, but and the final trope I've got here is a taste of the lash, which are lots of those.
Yep.
So now we come to the whole point of this podcast.
Yes, but we won't spend very long on it. We're trying to compare the 39 Steps to the Mutiny on the Bounty to see whether the 39 Steps could have somehow won an Oscar by borrowing some features of the Mutiny on the Bounty. So, I mean, really, 39 Steps had to get rid of all the women if they thought they were going to win.
Yes, yeah. Big mistake from Hitchcock in establishing Pamela as a feisty romantic interest.
Yep.
She should have just been a stereotypical native island girl, apparently.
That's right, roaming the Scottish moors.
Yes. Very, very lost from Tahiti, but that's okay. It doesn't matter.
Very hard to camouflage them neatly in the Scottish Highlands, so definitely that would help. The villain in the 39 Steps, that's Professor Jordan, right? He was great too.
He was a great villain.
He was a good villain, but I guess he didn't flog enough people, right?
No, he needed to. Before shooting Hannah, he should have also flogged him with a whip beforehand. If he'd done that, then the Academy might have gone, "Oh, I like the look of this 39 Steps."
Yep.
I also think it was a big mistake for Hannah to just simply run around the Scottish Highlands. He needed to get on a ship at some point and sail around Scotland. He could have sailed halfway
there's
to
plenty
Tahiti.
of there's lots of locks and there's lots of coastline. He could have easily got on a ship.
So big mistake there from another mistake from Hitch. You can see why he always misses out with all these silly errors.
Because he actually does movies that are interesting as opposed to this particular movie.
Yes,
anyway,
which I guess brings us to our ranking of the Oscar movies.
Yeah. All right, where are you going to put it?
I'm going to put this one. So we've watched.
Is this our 9th movie?
This is our 9th because had a double up at some point. So I'm going to rank this number 6. So I've got The Godfather, The Gaslight, Rebecca, Wings, Marty, then Mutiny on the Bounty. Then You Can't Take It With You, Around the World in 80 Days, and The Lost Weekend. Where's your Mutiny on the Bounty sitting?
I'm putting it right in the middle, number 5.
Oh, number 5, okay.
Now, I don't know. I think I've got the first 3 are Gaslight, Rebecca and Wings, and then You Can't Take It With You. And then the rest of them I think are equal last after that. Mutiny on the Bounty. Look, The Godfather wasn't much worse. That's my next film after. Mutiny on the Bounty 5, Godfather 6. I just lost interest in the amount of time it might take to split them.
Yep.
So
fair enough.
Equally last, Mutiny, Godfather, Lost Weekend, Around the World and Marty.
Very good. All right, so our next movie we'll be starting the top 10 with our next movie. So top 10 Hitchcock movies. So do you want to go over the cryptic clue and see if anybody's guessed what this 4-letter movie might possibly be?
Yes, you may just be able to guess it from the 4 letters. The answer, of course, is rope, and it's built up as follows. Going in is an indicator to look within the following few words or phrase. If you look within those words, you will notice the phrase for opening night, and the last letter of the word for and the first 3 letters of opening spell rope.
Yeah, so going in for opening night of this film, 4 letters means rope. So we will be doing a rewatch of Rope from 1948. This is my top-ranked Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
I loved Rope. So I'll be interesting to see where it goes on a second viewing. What about you? I think you had it 21st?
Yeah, I ranked it 21st. So I reckon this might have been our biggest split as far as the furthest away rankings of a movie.
I think there's a couple of others which you just hate.
Oh, yes, the ones that I really hate and have at the bottom. Suspicion,
yeah. But yeah, this was a big gap. So anyway, we will see what we think after a rewatch. If you have any questions or feedback on Rope, you can email them to us. That's feedback@hitchpodonline.com. We will do our best to answer them in the next episode. We won't be doing a book club over on Patreon this time around because Rope is based on a play rather than a book, and I'm not sure there's much to be gleaned from reading basically the dialogue that we're going to be listening to in the movie.
I am curious now to see whether the play and the screenplay are different.
You're welcome to read it, and if other people want to read it, if enough people want to read it, we will do a book club. But
send us your comments if you do read it, and then perhaps we don't have to.
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, we will speak to you next month.
Thank you for listening to HitchPod. Please come and talk to us on Twitter @HitchPodTweets or on Facebook by searching for HitchPod. And you can also email us directly at feedback@hitchpodonline.com. And if you want more Hitchcock content, please consider becoming a HitchPod supporter. Just go to patreon.com/HitchPod, and for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Season 1 coverage of every single Hitchcock movie, as well as bonus episodes on Hitchcock-esque movies. Invitations also to watch live rewatches and much, much more.